Anyway, let's get to Israel and Iran. Obviously, the MOU is dead in the water now, at least according to Donald Trump. The situation is active. It's fluid. We're going to be monitoring that. We'll get to the Ann Widdecombe news later. But before we do that, let's start with Israel telling the United States of an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. New report says. Maki Zanin, thank you for the 20 gifted subs.
On the conflict with Iran and a stunning report that the country was planning to assassinate President Trump. The Wall Street Journal reported Thursday that Israel shared that intelligence about it with the U.S. All this coming as tensions between the U.S. and Iran remain high after the latest air and missile strikes. Charlie D'Agata has more from Washington. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning to you, Kelly. The fighting this week has been by far the most serious escalation we've seen since the U.S. and Iran signed the framework last month that was supposed to lead to a more permanent peace agreement. And although last night was quiet for the first time in
Hey, are you happy Israel's now going to get a pro-AIPAC, pro-genocide senator in Maine now that you led the mob in cooping the voters of Maine? Oh, damn. We got Graham Plattner dead enders in here. That's crazy. Here, if you're 100% in support of Graham Plattner, I mean, there's a reasonable suspicion in his background, considering that his brother-in-law was and it still is, I think, a FDD guy. So, if the credible rape allegations were not enough for you, there's at least like ample suspicion that you could have due to his brother-in-law.
days, that fragile ceasefire is barely holding together.
Are you talking like bad empanada now? No, I'm not. Here's the thing. I think I had a fairly reasonable assessment with Graham Plattner, which is why it pissed off everybody, right? I looked at the red flags. I pointed to them. Nowhere near as much as like his Reddit posts and Reddit history, especially like detailing his experiences. I chalked that up to like, a hoorah grunt, greatly embellishing and thinking that was hot shit and cool. Okay. And I took a very centrist approach to the Graham Plattner situation, recognizing the red flags while also simultaneously saying that he was a far better option with the readily available information at the time, far better option than Janet Mills, and also far better option than Susan Collins. For that reason, a lot of people got mad at me and they said, no, you should actually write him out across the board. You should write him out immediately. It turns out those people were vindicated when new evidence came out. Okay? When new evidence came out. Now, here's the thing. I wanted to also identify certain red flags myself. What is this? Been watching you for years and always thought you were always smart, but this is some audience captured shit. No, it's ironic because everyone says that. And they've said that for years and years. And it's really funny because most of the positions that I have, well, all the positions that I have are just my genuine perspective. But a lot of the positions that I take on issues such as this one, when there is like, nuance involved, end up pissing everybody off because most people just want black and white. Most people want unconditional support or unconditional enmity. And it's interesting that my cautiously optimistic perspective, where I always hedged my my approach to Graham Plattner, the demands that I made to his team over and over again, that were very favorable initially, and became not so favorable after I started calling out some of these red flags, including the tattoo, including his background, including his CV, Blackwater tours, and try to get a better assessment on like where he was. Was he actually a real anti-war former veteran, or was he actually simply playing a role? These are the questions that I had that I wanted to figure out. The campaign stopped talking to me after that. It just, they avoided me like the plague. And some people might say, Some people, yes, he's got skeletons in his closet, but this was just objectively a coup against 150,000 voters in Maine. I think that even if you were to believe that the Democratic Party did everything that it can to rat fuck Graham Plattner, I don't think you would like the results of leaving Graham Plattner on the ticket, because there are always going to be people who saw that he had a credible rape allegation and decide not to vote for him. Can't find it within themselves to vote for him. Many women, for example. And that's perfectly valid and it's perfectly reasonable. And so at that point, it doesn't even matter. Even if you're making this like cold heart analysis, an immoral analysis or an amoral analysis, it still doesn't matter, because Graham Plattner is credibly accused of rape by a former partner. Okay? And the unfortunate reality is he's running as a Democrat, right? Unless the political piece falls apart as much as it already has, I don't think it has fallen apart. I don't think it has fallen apart as much as you think it has. So, dead enders straight from r/politics, Bernie bro smears. Wait, what? I've called fucking Joe Brandon dead enders and Kamala Harris dead enders as well. What are you talking about? It's just you can actually consider a group of people who are still riding with a person after the person is like openly admitted that they're going to drop their campaign a dead ender, because that's what it is. Once the campaign stopped answering, you should have called that out immediately. No. I mean, I mentioned it. I mentioned it over and over again, but it doesn't matter. HasanAbi been wearing the suit too long. He's got DNC consultant brain. You were wrong about Kamala in 2024. You're wrong now. The establishment are pros and the left is easily manipulated. Go look at local Facebook and news posts. Mainers are not buying this allegation. This is how the left loses. We do centrist work for them. What evidence? Contemporaneous conversations between the victim and other people, third parties, is a fairly reliable metric for assessing the accuracy of a claim. It's certainly enough to charge someone with sexual assault. It's not enough to convict. There would probably be, it's very difficult to convict someone on rape in this current criminal justice system, contrary to what men's rights activists and numerous other people say. But there is definitely enough to charge this person. So unless there is new information that has come out that shows that there isn't any timely conversations between Graham Plattner's victim and numerous other people, unless there's like new information that I'm not privy to, which even then I'd have to make a new assessment. The number of red flags, the additional things that he has said paint a picture that I am uncomfortable with. I don't know why people are saying there isn't any contemporaneous evidence. Unless Politico invented third parties that Graham Plattner's ex spoke to, like the ex-boyfriend, unless they invented that, which is, fairly far-fetched. And to be fair, yes, Politico is owned by Axel Springer, who is an unbelievably pro-Israel person. So, that is real. And there's a demand for a loyalty pledge to Israel from Axel himself. I just don't think that I like your assessment has to reach a certain standard. Like your hypothesis can't be more far-fetched than the readily available evidence. Anyway, don't know why we're going back into the Graham Plattner allegations here. instead of talking about what's going on currently. Israel telling the American government that there's an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump.
Fight between the U.S. and Iran entered a dangerous new phase, pushing the prospects for peace even further out of reach. This latest back and forth kicked off after U.S. officials said Iran fired on 3 commercial vessels earlier this week in the Strait.
So Axel Springer is the German media group that owns Politico. Okay. Axel Springer was a massive, massive fucking Zionist. New owners claim, according to Times of Israel from September 1st, 2021, new owners won't make political employees sign pro-Israel mission statement. But Axel Springer, the German firm that bought the U.S. news site, was such a staunch supporter of Israel that they would require the staff to place support to the Transatlantic Alliance and Israel. Okay?
Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping channel, particularly for oil. The Iranians want to control the strait and have shown they are willing to do it.
I think the new CEO is also just as insane, though, regardless. Look, Matthias Döpfner, CEO of Axel Springer, declares himself a Zionist to the World Jewish Congress and then calls for censorship of social media and the expulsion of anti-Semites from wherever legally possible. He insists that all European countries open their borders to Jewish immigration in the name of diversity. Europe must become more Jewish, Döpfner says. Now, some of this stuff is not that crazy. Like the way that this account is framing it is making it seem like it's this weird thing. But it is philo-Semitism. There is a classic German philo-Semitism that I don't know what it is, but there's a classic German philo-Semitism that you can clearly fucking spell out here. Okay?
An idea and a goal that only Jews can embrace. I'm a goy.
I love when these guys come out and they'll go to the World Jewish Congress and be like, well, I'm a goy. So with your stupid goy brain that I have, I still understand how important Israel is. I am the stupid goy. And I have the stupid goy brain.
And I'm a Zionist. With all my heart, out of conviction, and with passion. First, we need a zero-tolerance policy towards open hatred of Jews.
He's also known to reframe former Waffen SS slogans into Zionism slogans. He's fucking nuts. Yeah, I will never understand. Like, we gotta investigate some of the Germans and their attitude towards Israel in the same way that, you know, you can only like do an autopsy analysis to like study the brains of football players to figure out like what level of CTE they had. You know, that's how I feel about some Germans. Like the way that they approach the situation is so wild. And it's like, this is weird, like idolatry, fetishization. It's just not something that you would experience in the real world at all.
All anti-Semites in word and deed, regardless of their origin, must be expelled wherever legally possible. British politician and Conservative Party leader Kami Badenoch put it clearly and courageously, I quote, anything that's inciting violence against Jews has got to go, quote end. We need this statement and its consequences not only in Britain, but in every democratic country. Second, Europe should introduce preferential immigration and citizenship for Jewish families. In the US, approximately 7.7 million Jews live. That is 2.2% of the population. In the EU and the UK combined, it is roughly 1 million. That is 0.2% and 10 times less.
Please don't center their Germanness when you've got the same exact type of guys running around all over your country Yeah, the reason why I center their Germanness, by the way, that's got to be a German anti-Zionist, one of the, 15. So I'm going to treat this with respect because you guys are fighting a very different battle over there. But in the United States of America, this kind of attitude certainly exists as well. Mike Huckabee is like one of the torchbearers of this movement, right? But the difference is we can identify where that's coming from, and it's centered around evangelical Christian Zionism. Whereas in Germany, it does actually turn into this like national humiliation, this national understanding, or rather the national shame that they feel, where they actually get to offset the guilt of the Holocaust away from any kind of like European anti-Semitism to these nasty Arabs, right? This modern behemoth. The Arabs have taught us how to be anti-Semitic, is what they say sometimes. So I think it is. I think it stems from Germanness for sure, like modern Germanness, the modern understanding of a German nation state, their shared history, their shared culture. It's this strange offloading of the guilt of the Holocaust and the anti-Semitism that led to the Holocaust to the Muslims, to Islam. It's very odd. And that's the reason why I center Germanness around it. Rather than in the United States of America, I don't think there is that same level of guilt. There is a level of guilt for sure. There's a level of guilt amongst Americans for the famous story of the boats that were sent back to Germany that had Jewish refugees, right? Like that certainly exists in American culture, but to the degree that you see philo-Semitism from Germans does not exist in America at all, with the exception of white evangelical Protestant Christians. I think it's mostly just rooted in anti-Semitism. Yes, of course, philo-Semitism is the other side of anti-Semitism. Zionism is by far the most convenient for if anti-Semitism nowadays, right-wingers of Europe could just hold on to their anti-Semitism by indulging in Zionism. I think that's part of it, yes.
Than in America. It is in Europe's own best interest to change that, and it is more than a gesture. If the idea of a multicultural society is to be taken seriously, then there is a
Bro, your German takes are not that good, man. Germans are the best at educating their country and culture about history. France and UK still glorifies many of its atrocities. I don't think Germany features a tremendous amount of education on its, the actions it took in like its African campaigns. That's number one. And number two, what I'm talking about is quite literally a fixture of German culture, with the exception of like my German chatter is in here. The tying of Zionism and Judaism and the highlighting of Israel. I mean, Germany literally paid reparations, right, to the state of Israel. I mean, it was heavily featured in Ta-Nehisi Coates' writing, where he tried to make a case in the affirmative for reparations. Not true at all. I'm not German, but spent there. Okay, dude. Well, then maybe dial it back. Germany is one of the most aggressive in its approach to combating anti-Zionism. Like out of all the European countries, it's literally the most aggressive. It's far more aggressive than the United States of America, because the United States of America, there's still the First Amendment, so that like plays a formative role in restricting what the government can and can't do. They're obviously trying to get that away, or they're trying to destroy that. But there is an ideal. There is an understanding of Judaism, or a fetishization of Judaism and a philo-Semitism that exists in Germany that I have compared to the way that Americans identify with like native culture. There is a similar fetishization of indigenous culture in the United States of America in the aftermath of the genocide of the indigenous populations that you see in Germany. The only difference is historically the Holocaust is far closer to modern German existence as opposed to the indigenous genocides were, 250 plus years ago and continued onward for throughout, the early frontierism. Having said that, the fetishization and the otherizing, or like the fetishization in general, is like identical almost. I literally write about this shit, man. It's terrifying. Yeah. It goes beyond the material necessity to have a colonial outpost in this resource-rich region for Germans. For Americans, like, their foreign policy decisions revolve around that. They don't give a fuck, right? There is no like, oh, we really fucked up with our mistreatment of the Jews or anything like that. It's pretty open as shut. What you see is what you get. They see it as a reliable colonial outpost, and its reliability is actually being called into question now. So there's obviously disagreements there in the State Department. There's always been some people in the State Department that have seen Israel as a massive national security threat. So the CIA and other functions of the state are of two different minds, and they are oftentimes butting heads with one another. Whereas in Germany, there is this higher prioritization of Israel due to the collective guilt of the Holocaust and how it's like formed into this idolization of the state of Israel, for sure. It's different. I don't know how else to describe it other than to say it's different. They feel it. Yeah. The Germans feel like there is a moral obligation to always defend Israel that goes even beyond capital. Of course, capital still plays a role in this. Capital always plays a role in this. Capitalism is the international organization of the economy. It's the only game in town. So, when you think about Axel Springer, for example, of course they have investments in the West Bank. Of course they have investments in Israel. Many of the pro-Israel Christians, of course, have a financial entanglement with the apartheid project. That's real. But what I'm talking about is like this this attitude that you see from German society. This attitude that you see from German society by and large that goes beyond the normal expectations. Having said that, I mean, German society is polled with regular frequency, and even German society, by and large, has recognized the atrocities that Israel is committing. It's just that you will never hear that from a person with a fraction of power. Even in the United States of America, there are people who are getting elected, for example, on anti-Zionist tickets. Whereas I feel like Die Linke is the closest that you can get to like a party with viability and not one of these like fucking 18-person Marxist-Leninist formations that exists in Germany. I'm talking like a viable party, a serious party that operates within German politics. Die Linke is the furthest left, right? And Die Linke still will, Die Linke only recently was able to come to terms with an official statement on Israel's genocide. And even then, they immediately paired that up with like the growth of anti-Semitism happening in Germany and other places as well. So I don't think that there is like appropriate representation within... Brother, you cannot be calling Die Linke a serious left party. I'm not. You're misunderstanding my point. It's a social democratic party at most. I'm saying that it's the furthest left party with any real viability. Okay? I'm not saying that... Guys, this conversation started with how cooked German politics is. Okay? Why does everybody always forget that I'm using the term viability very deliberately here? Okay? Please, this is a nuanced perspective. What I'm trying to say is there isn't a real recognition. There isn't a real recognition. There isn't any real proportional representation of German societal attitudes towards Israel in German politics. Okay? That's all I'm saying. You look at Germany, modern Germany, and their society, their attitude towards the nation state of Israel, and it's unbelievably negative. And yet there is no real party out there. There's no real party out there that actually abides by this attitude. You know what I mean? So like even Die Linke, which is supposed to be like the leftmost party with any serious viability, is nowhere near as close to the public sentiment on Israel in Germany. It's just not. There isn't enough representation of people, full stop. Yes, Israel is a great example of this lack of representation. Okay? Maybe explaining when you say viable, you mean it in the context of whether or not like a pregnancy is viable or not? No, viability is in like it's a serious party with like a decent amount of representation that can win seats. Okay, that's what viability means. Viability in the American electoral system is also implied. Like it's not like an American Communist Party, for example, but instead like a candidate that is viable, as in has a tremendous amount of support within striking distance, could potentially win. That's what viability means. Anyway, how the fuck are we talking about Germany? Oh my God. All right, I'm done. I'm done talking about Germany. Let's get back to Israel telling the United States government that Iran wants to kill Trump.
Disadvantage right now because they don't think President Trump has the will to sustain a campaign against them.
President Trump himself said this week he wasn't looking for the war to go on, calling the strikes retribution for Iranian aggression.
I think anything that happens is going to be over very quickly.
The strikes may be punitive, but they're also strategic. U.S. officials tell CBS News they've hit more than 170 Iranian military targets along the strait in the hopes of loosening Iran's hold on the waterway. Iran fired back, targeting key U.S. allies in the Gulf, including Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain.
This is not anywhere near an end of the war. This is just entering kind of a new phase.
In Iran, this all comes as crowds gathered for the funeral of the late supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei.
The German left is currently focused on you because they think the DSA will end up like Die Linke? Fuck no. There's 0% chance the Democratic Socialists of America would ever end up like Die Linke because the Democratic Socialists of America are outcasts from the normal political process. And the more it becomes a fixture in normal American politics, the more we run DSA candidates, the more they win elections in an uncompromising manner, and the more they put up a fight, the more they develop some sort of caucus or political power within the Democratic Party, the more radical they would become, not less. Why would they become less radical? I mean, we shall see. We shall see. I have a lot of confidence in this new slate of candidates that we've worked to get elected. Some of which are, many of which are Democratic Socialists, and some of which are adjacent, right? DSA has always recognized the genocide. DSA has always had a far more radical approach than Die Linke ever could come to terms with.
Some mourners pictured holding a banner that read, "Trump, we will kill you." The conflict has prompted extra security measures for President Trump in an unexpected switch. He left the NATO summit in Turkey this week in the old Air Force One, as its replacement, gifted by the government of Qatar, was sent out of the region without him. Now,
Yeah, I wonder why. Perhaps the runway to develop with all of the like anti-missile systems and the evasive capabilities of a regular Air Force One, the refueling capabilities of regular Air Force One, the like all of the technical capabilities of a normal Air Force One plane is very different than a normal civilian plane that you got from Qatar. Okay? So there is no way that you could redesign a normal Boeing plane that you got from Qatar in 4 months. Normal, at most, the best you can do is, I guess, check it for bugs and then put a fresh coat of paint, which, by the way, controversial opinion, but I really do like the paint job. I will say that. I think this paint job is actually pretty solid. So that's 1 point to give to Donald Trump. I know he chose this. It's clean. It looks fucking dope. But I will say this. There's a reason why he chose not to fly back with this one. Okay?
now sources tell
the reason why he chose not to fly back with this one is because he's now scared that Iran is going to lob ballistic missiles at it or something. So now he's flying back with the OG Air Force One.
CBS News, it was on the recommendation of the Secret Service. The old plane is equipped with sophisticated
look at this paint job, dude.
military defenses and secure communication systems that the new Air Force One lacks. So the Trump administration says the president remains committed to finding a resolution with Iran, but called the recent attacks on the vessels in the Strait of Hormuz terrorism. Nevertheless, a U.S. official tells CBS News talks with Iran will continue. Vlad?
All right, Charlie, let me ask you about what we're learning about that report regarding a new Iranian plot to kill President Trump, and why is it coming to light now?
The big question, the timing is unclear because, there have been active plots in Iran to assassinate President Trump since at least back in 2020. That's when the president ordered the strike that killed Iranian Al-Quds force commander Qasem Soleimani. And you saw those banners during the funerals for the supreme leader calling for the death of Trump. Why Israel is raising this plot now is unclear. You may remember Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu helped convince President Trump to launch the war after that famous visit to the White House in February. The two spoke again yesterday. The reminder of the assassination plot may be an attempt to convince Trump to keep up attacks. Vlad?
All right, Charlie, thank you very much.
Now, as you can see, I'm joined by Professor Michael Clark, because are we returning to all-out war between Iran and the United States? Intensifying strikes across the Middle East overnight. There were US attacks on dozens of sites across.
What about all the other public assassination attempts? Well, there's a difference between first of all, do I think that there's a credible assassination threat? I suspect that there's always a credible assassination threat. The whole point is he gives them an opportunity. He gives them an opportunity to strike if he's in the old plane. You're the president of America. You're fucking around with numerous nations. It makes sense that there is credible threats to your life and your safety. It's a little bit different than, the possible attempts on your life from a radical centrist at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Right? But yeah, when you're flying around, when you're flying around on a fucking plane that doesn't have the same evasive maneuvering capabilities as the previous Air Force One does, when you're flying around in a plane that doesn't have anti-missile systems in it, when you're flying around in a plane that doesn't have the same nuclear bunker facilities that the Air Force One normally has, and the capacity to get refueled even, Retooling a civilian Boeing plane takes like almost a decade. Okay, you got to do it right. It's the president. It's the most important person in the country, the most important person maybe on the planet from the perspective of the people, the engineers working on it. So I know he likes the new plane. He likes it a lot. He thinks it's great. He thinks it looks cool. And the interior is much nicer. But, you know, that's the reason why he just chose not to fly around in that, clearly. Anyway, Michael Clark is back to talk about the intensified strikes between the U.S. and Iran. Look, I think it's pretty obvious what happened here. I already talked about this extensively. I gave you my perspective on this. I'll just give you a quick update on it. It's still the same. It's now becoming increasingly clear, and more clear, that the MOU was bullshit, and it was just to allow some respite for the strategic reserves that were near critical levels. I believe it was like 1 to 4 weeks away from reaching critical levels where if you actually go below a certain red line in the strategic reserves, you have the capacity for those salt caverns where a lot of the oil remains to collapse. Okay? That still remains. That issue still remains, and it's going to come back again. Iran knows this. Okay? Iran obviously understands this reality, and that was what they were hedging their bets on. So Donald Trump came in, wanted to give the markets a moment to breathe, right? Released the sanctions on Iranian oil. They had already released the sanctions on Russian oil prior to this as well. And the oil reserves were not going to recover, but at least it would stabilize the market a little bit. It would make things a little bit easier, right? It would give America some level of leverage. On the Iranian side, they recognize this. They get a moment of respite, or they can go back to rebuilding their infrastructure. They can go back to rebuilding their munitions facilities that have taken a significant amount of damage. They can get Chinese shipping and Chinese components, so they can go back to like rebuilding their drones to re-up and rearm basically in that short period of time. And that's precisely what took place. So I think that the Iranian side is aware that the MOU was dead in the water. Maybe some of the reformists thought that there was an opportunity for a deal. But I think the IRGC was already, like the hardliners were already aware that this wasn't going to stick, right? Hold on. So for those of you who are wondering what I'm talking about with the salt caverns, okay? Underground salt cavern collapses threaten energy stockpiles like the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve. Cavern failures cause pressure drops, sinkholes, and potential aquifer contamination. Maintaining brine levels and internal pressure is critical to preserve the structural integrity of these vital petroleum and gas reserves. The U.S. stores its massive energy stockpile capable of holding up to 714 million barrels in hollowed-out salt caverns along the Gulf Coast. However, the technique of solution mining used to create these caverns leaves them susceptible to structural vulnerabilities over time. So if you go beyond a certain red line of oil inside of these salt caverns, you have too little pressure, and you could potentially have them collapse, which would destroy the rest of the oil, the oil stockpile, the strategic reserves that we have. Okay? The Department of Energy manages and monitors 4 major sites across Texas and Louisiana to ensure that these reserves remain structurally sound and mission ready. truly the most Amerifat problem? I guess. For the record, they're capable of holding 715 million, but once you go below 150 million barrels of oil, okay? Once you go below 150 million barrels of oil, the pressure drops to such a degree that those salt caverns could technically collapse. Okay? We need 150 million barrels of oil in the salt reserves that we never take out of those salt reserves, because if we do take them out, if we go beneath that level, then there is a likely scenario where these salt caverns collapse. Okay? Do you understand? Here's what it looks like. I guess. The Brian Mound Strategic Petroleum Reserve Caverns in Texas. Okay? So the capacity is 580 million barrels and not 720. Yes. Well, it could also not collapse. So, you know, I guess that's what it is. But yeah, here it is. Did anyone see that? Analytica Camilla says, did anyone see that piece by The Economist where they apologize for being wrong about oil prices? It's one of those rare, well, honestly, not that rare cases where not only were they not wrong, investors were/are just detached from reality. The Trump admin suckered the stock market with the laziest cycle of pump fakes I've ever seen. Every few days, they'd have an official go and tell Barack Ravid that we're making great headway on the whole ceasefire thing, and investors believe them every single time, even though Barack himself pointed out that he was just literally reporting on what they were saying, but it's quite obvious that they're trying to bullshit everybody. Meanwhile, the global oil market's neck snap from the war whiplash. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserves are basically empty. They can't dip below 150 million barrels without having the caves where the oil is stored collapse, and the White House started creating literal communist-style gas stations. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the White House creates communist-style gas stations, because the strategic reserves, if they diminish to that degree, it's over. Okay? You hit a hard limit. And that's where things get really fun. Once you hit a hard limit, and if you start seeing real structural integrity failures, okay, all of a sudden, you don't have any fucking oil. And when you run out of oil, when you run out of the strategic reserves in its entirety, or you start seeing structural collapse in these strategic reserves, the problem compounds far beyond not being able to receive, the problem compounds far beyond simply going to a gas station and seeing the prices, okay? The prices will obviously skyrocket where gas is readily available, but we're talking about the electrical grid. We're talking about the entire American, the American electrical grid potentially turning into the Cuban one, okay? So, here's the issue. And I covered this yesterday as well. Here's Eric Nuttall. The U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve is now 19 million barrels away from the estimated minimum operating levels. There very soon will no longer be a safety buffer to protect the world from the further losses out of the strait. Okay? You now, when you reach 300 million, you're now reaching a red line where there's only 150 million to go until complete structural integrity failure. Okay? And every single day, it's getting worse. Every single day, the problem compounds on one another. Okay? This is the reason why Donald Trump tried to do a fake out with this MOU so that Iran could sell its oil on the market, and this would give confidence to the investors. This would give some confidence to the investors. It would offer a moment of respite so that the American oil reserves could stop burning as many barrels as they are. However, it simply pushes the problem later down the line. And the more you push this problem down the line, the more you push it in the direction of the midterms. So I don't even understand what Trump is trying to do, because the problem doesn't go away. if they were to now go back to war, waging war as we have, right? There is no guarantee that a military intervention is actually going to force the Iranian hand to bend to America's needs, to Israel's needs. Okay? And that's just our strategic reserves. I don't know what it looks like in Japan, for example, right? Because the massive stockpiles that Japan has, they've also tapped into in order to make sure that there aren't critical shortages. Because, again, I repeat this over and over again, the reason why oil is a global commodity is because it is perhaps the most important commodity for survival, for normal everyday existence. Everything runs on oil. Everything runs on oil and gas. And it has inelastic demand, right? You can artificially reduce demand, as some of these countries have, like the Philippines have artificially reduced demand. You can try to go back to different fossil fuels like coal, which Thailand did, right? But ultimately, you still need oil, okay? That's not true, HasanAbi, you fucking idiot, says COO of Antifa. America runs on Duncan. Okay, fair. While other countries don't run on Duncan, they run on oil, right? So that's the reason why the price is priced out globally. Because countries will do everything they can to get it. Because in the absence of it, their grid fails. Okay? Every other country turns into Cuba. And there's also a lot of, spot traders. There's also a lot of shadow fleets all around the world that are operating. Some of the oil tankers that are doing regular trade also famously have, additional millions of barrels of oil that they're selling to make a quick buck on the side. This has also allowed the market to not be as volatile because a lot of people understand that this is just how it goes, right? Having said that, there is a hard line. There's a hard limit that you reach. And once you reach that hard limit, everything collapses. It's no longer just a higher price at the gas pump, which will definitely happen, but it won't be, 50 cents or $1 more. It will be $10 more. You'll start seeing lines of cars at every gas station around the country. You'll start seeing rolling blackouts, for example. An artificial reduction in demand in a country like the United States of America will collapse the largest consumption engine on the planet. This will have tremendous impact on the global economy. Okay? 70s oil crisis tenfold. So, it's no longer just about Americans feeling shitty about paying extra money. We're now talking about complete collapse. So the reason why I'm bringing up all of this is because that's leverage that Iran has, right? If we know about this, then obviously the Iranian government knows about this as well. That's part of the reason why they can play hardball. Iran was able to, through blood and through sacrifice and through their drone production facilities, they were able to successfully gain tremendous leverage as they now control the Strait of Hormuz. The MOU, in the language that they interpreted, in the language that they used on the MOU, implied that they would open the Strait of Hormuz as long as all of the vessels that were transiting would transit through the Iranian side. But of course, there's the Omani coastline as well. Iran has allowed the Omani coastline to also operate. But America made a big show of force. They tried to get as many ships as possible through the Omani coastline, and Iran was fine with it for a little bit because they got respite from the American blockade, the secondary blockade that America had implemented, right? And so now it's I don't want to say a Mexican standoff. It's an Iranian standoff, basically. Okay. Iran's put a gun to the head of the global energy markets, and America has put a gun to the head of the same global energy markets. And it's now about who gets to buckle first. The new standoff. America, for some weird fucking reason, has decided that it's more beneficial to try to force Iran by bombing civilian infrastructure again and again and again. This didn't work in the last 130 days in Operation Epic Fury, Part 1. So there is no reason for this to work in Operation Epic Fury Part 2. Okay? Iran knows this. So inevitably, America is going to have to go back to the ceasefire table. America is going to have to go back unless they just collapse everything. And I don't think they're going to do that. Iran has all the cards. America could only escalate further and try to diminish Iranian strike capabilities. But as long as Iran can lob these drones at civilian ships that are transiting millions of barrels of oil through the Omani coastline, which is fairly easy to do, they can do this with their go-fast boats. They can do this with their drones. So they control the Strait of Hormuz. You just can't outperform the geographic limitations here. It's 21 miles wide. The only parts that ships can transit through are either the Omani coastline, hugging the Omani coastline, or hugging the Iranian coastline. They're not going to be able to get away with attriting the Iranian strike capabilities in the water, especially because Iranians already have additional cards that they haven't even deployed, like shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait by utilizing the Houthis. So things could get far worse going forward. Meanwhile, the Americans have ironically diminished their missiles, their standoff munitions, because they couldn't establish air superiority over Iranian airspace. So they couldn't use their unguided and guided missiles that they could deploy over Iran and they have plenty of stockpile on their unguided and guided munitions that they could just drop. They could drop gravity bombs by flying their planes over the Iranian airspace. But every single time they've flown planes over the Iranian airspace, the Iranian air defenses and their loitering munitions kick in, and it's far too costly for the American war effort to risk more pilots, to risk more assets. Iranians keep blowing up their MQ-9 Reaper drones, which are, $30 million a pop. And Iranians have even been able to shoot down over the Strait of Hormuz helicopters. They've been able to shoot down an F-35. And we're running through our stockpile of standoff munitions that we've been deploying from these ships that are far away from the Iranian drones. And we've diminished our stockpile of interceptors. We've reduced our stockpile of peer and near-peer adversary standoff munitions that we always have to have in a manner not dissimilar to the strategic oil reserves that I was talking about. There's also a strategic reserve of stockpiled munitions that we have that we always need to keep in the tank for, God forbid, war against Russia or direct conflict against China. We've already diminished that. We've already destroyed those stockpiles. Those stockpiles are not coming back. It takes a very long time to rebuild Tomahawk missiles. Okay? It takes a long ass time. It requires a lot of effort. We're just not going to be able to get that back as fast as Iran can just build drones, as fast as Iran can build its ballistic munitions. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, what is this? You're just wrong here. There won't be. Japan's reserves have fallen from 400 barrels to 200 million. There's still months of supply. You're just wrong here. There won't be rolling blackouts in the U.S. There won't be gas lines. Gas prices will go up and there won't be blackouts. I don't know where people get this idea from. It's going to be Europe, Asia, South America that will suffer from this. U.S. will be fine. I think that's why Trump doesn't actually care about the impact. You think we still got more oil in the strategic reserves? Like, what happens when the strategic reserves go beyond the 300 million barrels of oil, go beyond the red line, and I guess like this goes on for another month. U.S. electricity depends on natural gas, not oil. Fair, true. But you said there's no. You said that there's not going to be lines at the gas station. We still produce 13 million barrels of oil per day. This is in the 1973 oil crisis. We are a major exporter of oil and oil products. We will simply stop exporting. Fair. So you're saying your calculation is that America will stop exporting before it allows any sort of significant crisis to take place here. Okay. There's still, at the end of this, what you're describing is longer bandwidth. Okay. What you're describing is longer bandwidth. So it's not a month, but let's say we just stop exporting oil to Europe and in Asia, right? We're going to fuck our allies. Fine. Sure. That's a consideration, right? But in spite of that, we're still burning more than we are. We'll still inevitably burn more than we're generating, than we're refining. So ultimately, we're talking about fucking massive consequences in Europe and Asia. All of our allies are screaming bloody murder. Their grids are collapsing. Okay. Meanwhile, we are still burning more. So that means we have, okay, past the midterms, let's say. The 3-2-1 crack spread shows what's going on with gas and diesel prices. So gas prices skyrocket. Let's say we don't get to long lines of the gas station, oil crisis style. Not 1973 any longer. Okay? Fine. Not in the short term, but certainly in the long term, because we're still using more oil than we're refining. So what do? Let's say we just burn the global economy, which is not going to happen anyway, because we're the United States of America. Our position as the hegemon means that we have to maintain global stability. This is part of the reason why Iran has tremendous leverage. Like, you can't just hand wave away rolling blackouts in Europe or major oil and gas crises in Europe and Asia as though we're far removed from the impact. Donald Trump's domestic considerations aside, there is a higher priority here, which is to maintain global stability. The entire global capitalist system is interconnected. We don't just shut down Japan or shut down the Philippines without receiving any sort of blowback or without receiving any sort of penalties for it. There are a shit ton of American companies that still rely on the Asian market. Okay? Like, there is no world in the post-World War II design, in the global capitalist design, where we do not get impacted and we don't see domestic issues when the Asian markets are experiencing rolling blackouts or can no longer produce certain goods, certain components that we need for American manufacturing. The United States is not independent of the global supply chain. It's perfectly dependent on the global supply chain. Do you think Trump understands any of this? Yes, I think he does. If he didn't understand any of this, he would not have done the MOU. So the MOU itself is a recognition of the fragile nature of the global supply chain. Okay? It's still 3 to 6 months before things get really dire, but yes, this is still kicking the can down the street. I think this will pressure Ukraine to surrender to Russia for oil supply. Yeah, this is not just about long lines at the gas station, by the way. This is also tremendous inflation. because a lot of the components and the parts that we need for manufacturing even products in the United States of America, whether it be car parts, whether it be, I don't know, plastic components that are necessary for little things that we use at the widget factory, are still coming from the Asian markets. And if they don't have oil, they can't produce that. And if they can't produce that, then we don't have these parts. So now all of a sudden, you have a massive spike in the cost of goods and regular commodities here in the United States of America. This is before we also talk about the diesel shortages, which you also mentioned here. When you don't have, you're an animal abuser, you don't deserve. Okay. When we talk about the diesel shortages, then you have problems with trucking. When you have problems with trucking, you now have a logistics issue in the United States of America as well as everywhere else. Okay? No diesel, no food, or rather shortages of food, because the transport is now the capacity to transport certain commodities is now diminished on U.S. soil as well. And when that happens, the price of food goes up. Anyway, let's take a look at what this UK guy is saying.
Iran, it was met with missiles targeting American bases in allied countries, including Kuwait, Jordan and Qatar. So is this a return to all-out war then, Michael?
I don't think so, Leah. I mean, both sides have gone quiet for the last 18 hours now, so there have been no other reciprocal strikes. So, it began with Iranian attacks on 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz, and then the Americans responded. The Iranians responded again with attacks on American bases, and the Americans have then hit a couple of 2 extensive raids on the coastline of Iran and 1 or 2 inland places as well. So both sides are trying to have the last word militarily, but both of them now have gone quiet for the time being. It might flare up again, but neither side, I think, want to go back to this all-out war, because the Americans have got plenty of military hardware in the area. They've still got 2 carrier battle groups there. The Lincoln is still there, the Abraham Lincoln carrier. The George W. Bush is still there. And those carriers, with their carrier battle groups, are very powerful. They've got a Marine Expeditionary Unit. They've got an assault ship. The Boxer's still there. They've got plenty of stuff to carry on the air war, but to what purpose? And the Iranians, again, they've got about 70% of their missile forces available to them from what they started with. They could carry on attacking the countries in the Gulf, but to what purpose? Other than to raise the sense of loss to everyone. So both sides are more interested in carrying on negotiations, particularly the Iranians, because they know they can string out these negotiations well beyond the 60 days of the ceasefire's extension. And the Iranian calculation is that they can outlast America economically longer than America can last politically, because the Americans are getting closer and closer to the midterm elections. And the Iranians think they've won. They think the Americans will have to withdraw, and they are now, you can see in the things that they're putting out, they are articulating a new regional strategy where they'll have a lot of influence in southern Iraq. They'll have control of the Houthis in Yemen. That will give them control effectively. There you are, the Red Sea, the bottom of the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait there at the foot of the Red Sea. The Houthis can close that. They can close the Strait of Hormuz. They will have the enmity of Saudi Arabia to deal with, but they had that anyway. I mean, the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates are very hostile now. But they know that the Omanis have got more or less to go with them. Qatar has got to more or less lean towards them a bit more. Qatar is in a very difficult position. So they know that they still have influence over the other Gulf states. They could have a stranglehold over Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb.
Stop coming right now. Stop coming. Chatters, stop coming.
I'm going to come.
Stop.
Do not come.
I'm going to come.
Straight, and they're still committed to the destruction of the state of Israel. So from their point of view, they have a new era, a third Islamic revolution to develop.
And all the while then, Michael, what is the situation with the Strait of Hormuz? Is it open? Is it closed? What do we know?
So it's like Schrodinger's cat. It's both open and closed simultaneously. Well, the Strait of Hormuz is interesting because the argument is all about the route. Actually, let me get up and explain. Is all right? Let me explain this. So the route that shipping takes time. The Americans say, no, we have a route along the Omani coast that we've cleared. We've made sure it's safe, right?
Can't go to Texas anymore because he's afraid that he needs to check in with Jasmine Crockett is really funny. I will be going to Texas eventually. We're working on something right now.
Right around the Musandam Peninsula, around the Hajar Mountains here, down towards Fujairah. And that route is where these ships were attacked in the week. So the Iranians are saying any ship using this route is
I still cook Maya. It's not even... I'll still cook Maya. That's not even a question. Don't even start with that. I'll cook Maya anytime. Not even a question.
Not safe because it's not using our route. And that's how it began. And what's interesting is that normally there's 130 odd ships going backwards and forwards day after day in normal times. In the last few days, last week, there was about 30, 40 ships going in and out. Last couple of days, it's 20 or fewer. And none of them, over the last 2 days, none of them have used the American route. Those that have gone in and out have all used the northern route. And that's the difference. So at the moment, the Iranians have got control of what is coming in and out, what little is coming in and out.
Yeah, by the way, this is basically leverage that is more consequential than enriched nuclear grade enriched uranium. Okay? So of course they're not going to give it up. Why would they? They fought for it. They bled for it. And they won it. And they showed the world how easy it is. So as long as they still have drones, as long as they can still lob, underwater drones or the regular drones that they have, it's not something that they're going to give up. America understands this, by the way. What I can't comprehend is why America thinks that they can still wait this out. Why the United States of America thinks that they could just like bomb Iran into submission this time, when last time it didn't work and they had to do a MOU for a brief moment of respite.
From the Strait of Hormuz, nobody is using the American route.
Okay.
That's what it's about. So are they going to go to war over a route? No. But they might go to war or back to war over who has control of the Strait of Hormuz ultimately. And what the Iranians are saying is, like it or not, we will have control in the future. The Strait of Hormuz will never go back to the way it was.
Yeah, of course, this wasn't an issue before February.
Yep.
Great stuff, Professor Michael Clark there.
Well, New York City mayor's office is under fire after Zoran Mamdani's International Affairs Commissioner reportedly made plans to meet with Iran's UN ambassador earlier this week. The timing could not have been worse. And the New York Post reporting this, the scheduled meeting would have unfolded after Iranian troops fired missiles at 2 commercial ships traversing the Strait of Hormuz. An action Monday in direct defiance of an interim peace agreement between the U.S. and Iran. Mayor Mamdani was asked about this at a news conference today. Watch.
That meeting did not take place. It will not take place. And I did not know about it until there was a press inquiry regarding it. And when it comes to the work of our commissioner and our International Affairs Office, it's to ensure that as we are a city of the world, that we are also there to meet with leaders from across the world. The focus is always on our city and our relationship. The commissioner recognized
they're worried Zoran's going to cook up a better deal than the MOU. They're worried. They're worried Zoran's going to make peace happen. Why is he at the gym? I just realized, what the fuck's going on here? Dude, because he's everywhere all the time and he's doing like regular mayoral shit, it's always so funny. Like they're like, hey, why was your liaison officer talking to the Ayatollah? And he's at the fucking gym and he's like, I don't know where that's coming from. Still in a suit.
recognizes that this was made an error, and we're working on a new process in terms of new meeting requests.
Oh, because him and Lena just did the easy to cancel, one-click cancels subscription thing. Hell yeah. He's just my goats. Thanks to Mayor Mamdani's administration, businesses must now make it easy to cancel a subscription as it is to sign up for one. New Yorkers can report subscription tricks and traps by calling 311 or filing a complaint. Breaking, Zohran Mamdani announces click to cancel rule for New York City. This rule is aimed at guaranteeing New Yorkers can cancel subscriptions as easily as they sign up and stopping corporations from trapping customers. This will save New Yorkers up to $162.5 million per year. Oh my God, this guy goes, it's easy to cancel subscriptions. Log in, account, subscription, cancel. Are you sure? Yes. Oh, wow. I didn't realize this wasn't a problem at all. Thank you.
New process? What about competence? Well, this comes as the Wall Street Journal reports Israel warned the U.S. that Iran hatched a new plan to assassinate President Trump. Iran has repeatedly vowed to retaliate against our president for ordering the killing of Iran's Revolutionary Guard General Qasem Soleimani. President Trump reiterated that this week.
They've been in trouble for 47 years, and we took out their first set of leaders. We took out their second set of leaders. They want to take out the U.S. leader, me. I'm on every list. I saw things this morning. I'm on every single one of their lists. And so far, I guess I've been a little bit lucky, but that maybe doesn't last very long.
The president told the Post today, quote, I've left instructions, if anything happens, to just literally bomb them at levels that they've never seen before. Rebecca, it's so frightening to even discuss this, and I can't even wrap my brain around it. But let's go back to New York City for a second. You have to be a pretty special form of, I'd say, incompetence and blindness to have that happen under your watch.
Well, okay, except that according to the City Journal, who saw some internal messages from this commissioner to Mamdani's internal staff, that they were to take meetings with foreign leaders who, quote, are in political alignment / leftist. And so my question is, why did they think that the Iranian regime is in political alignment or leftist with them when, yes, the Iran regime is firing on commercial shipping? They're also firing at Americans, at American warships, at American...
Dude, this is the newest version of kidnap from a tank. Okay? That's so funny. This is the American version of kidnap from a tank. How dare Iran fire at American warships? How could Iran fire at American warships if those warships were not within striking distance? How could that have happened? It's so funny, man. That's awesome. That's great. Wow, I can't believe Iran is fucking defending itself from American warships and American planes